debate to discuss several issues faced by the country, which apparently has been terribly mismanaged by the government, as a result of which the people and the country are facing a serious jeopardy in various areas. But what is ironic is that subject ministers who have come to speak on issues related to them avoided talking about the subjects that they have to talk about. For instance, the minister in charge of ports and shipping, without dealing with the Express Pearl catastrophe that has affected the entire biodiversity of our seas and the coastal areas, has totally neglected speaking about the subject. We had to prompt him to answer questions relating to that. Similarly, the Minister of Trade, who had to talk about the biggest fraud that the gas company has done in this country by converting the weight of the gas cylinder into liters from kilos, without talking about the subject, we had to prompt him to answer the question, and then he went around beating around the bush. Similarly, the Minister of Health, who apparently has to deal with the mismanagement of the COVID-19 virus issue, she was talking about the fertilizer issue. So it is apparent that the ministers are trying to avoid their subject areas because they have all mismanaged their subject area, but are talking about something else, some other subjects, which is totally not related to their under their supervision. And let me now first start with the way the COVID-19 issue has been mismanaged. I'll quote from the Sunday Times this week, which says how this is being mishandled by the Health Ministry. The government's vaccination program is now it's questioned. The questions have been raised in these columns last week. The lowering of PCR tests. In a letter to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa last Friday, the Sri Lanka Medical Association noted that there has been a significant reduction in the number of PCR tests carried over the last 2 weeks. The sum effect of such an exercise, it lowers the number of afflicted cases. Thus, the figures given to the people are lower. The Sri Lanka Medical Association letter pointed out that we understand that the majority of the reported PCRs are exit PCR that do not measure to the extent of transmission in the community. Unless PCRs are carried out proactively, it is likely that the usefulness of the results of analysis of samples with most exit PCRs will remain low, despite the disease spreading rapidly. Similarly, unless the disaggregated test results based on context categories and geographical locations are analyzed, the inference made by all PCRs together is likely to be most erroneous. Now, I must thank the minister in charge, the state minister in charge, Dr. Sudashini Fernandes-Pulle. She has been very honest. She very clearly said statistics by government may not be accurate. For every positive test that is recorded, there could be 3 times that many cases. She was honest enough to admit it. But they went on talking about the Nivea cluster, and they had always talked about the Paliagoda cluster, the Brandix cluster, but then avoided admitting that there was a community spread. This is what has happened. Now the community spread has come to a position where it is virtually unmanageable. Deaths are increasing day by day, and the Sunday Times very clearly says that since May 1st till 31st this year, however, the rise in the number of cases has been alarming. During this period, there were 806 deaths, and the total afflicted were 76,718. This quite clearly shows that this is the worst month of Sri Lanka. Worst month for Sri Lanka.
Honourable Member, you have 2 more minutes. You have 2 more minutes.
Yeah, while that situation remains as it is, they are going about beating around the bush. The health minister doesn't talk about COVID. She comes and talks about the fertilizer. The shipping minister talks about the the health issues, COVID-19, avoiding talking about the Express Pearl disaster. Now, this is why I'm talking about, and the trade minister. Now, this Litrogas issue, now there's an attempt to somehow merge Lauf's with Litrogas. All know Lauf's terminal company is heavily indebted to the Bank of Ceylon and the People's Bank, to the tune of almost 22 billion for both the state banks. Now, what is the government attempting to do? They are trying to bail out the Lauf's businessman. Maybe the businessman may be close to the government. So, to bail him out, now they are looking at a different issue of creating a PPP, a public-private partnership to bail out somebody who has mismanaged their work, and the government goes on to even allege that Litrogas, now government itself says a good restructuring initiative is important. Litro is corrupt and makes money out of spot buying with only 3 days of stock capacity. Now, the government source have been telling this to the Sunday Times. This is an article by Namini Vijayadasa which talks about the controversy.
Remember, your time is over. Please wind up.
Debt-laden loss. Now, while doing this, they are hoodwinking the consumers by reducing the weight of the gas cylinder and displaying the label instead of kilos, they are displaying it as liters, whereas almost 3 kilos is reduced and 400 rupees more is charged from the consumer. Now, the other danger, Mr. Presiding Member, is that by merging these two companies, at least by 40% of the stake is to be bought by Litrogas, means finally we'll end up, the consumers will end up with a monopoly. You are creating a monopoly, and then again with the monopoly, the consumers will be affected. So this issue has to be addressed. And when the COP wanted to examine the Litrogas, now Litrogas, I'm told by the chairman, Charita Herath, he told me this afternoon at the library, that the Litrogas company has refused to come before COP, saying that they have got a court order. Whereas the Attorney General has certified.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Please wind up.
Wholly owned subsidiary of the insurance corporation, they are bound to come before the Committee on Public Enterprises, which is a part of this Parliament, which is the watchdog over public finance in this country. Therefore, they cannot hide behind court orders. They have to come before the COP and answer the queries relating to the hoodwinking of the consumers in this country by photographing the figures and also trying to enter into a contract. Now, they say the cabinet...
Thank you, Honourable Member. We are very short for time.
Yes,
thank you. Please wind up.
The cabinet has appointed a subcommittee of 5 ministers, but that may be so. But then Litrogas cannot avoid coming before the Parliamentary Committee on Public Enterprises, and they will have to answer these serious questions about creating a monopoly and also hoodwinking the public by misleading them by the weight mentioning the weight in the gas cylinder. Thank you, Mr. President.